Standing up for families throughout Nevada, telling the stories of working women and men. This is our voice and our community. We are Nevada with your hosts, Leonard Cardinale and Nick DiArcangelo.
Come on, rise up. Come on, rise up. Come on, rise up. Come on, rise up. Come on, rise up.
All right, everybody. Happy Friday. This is We Are Nevada here on 1230 a.m. KLAV, and I'm Nick DiArcangelo, and joining me is my co-host this morning, Leonard Cardinale. Good morning, Leonard.
Good morning, Nick, and good morning to all the listeners.
It's funny because I'm actually hesitating a little bit because I'm so excited. I can hardly even get the words out because of the election.
Yeah, the election, Barack Obama, second term, and Mitt Romney put up a good fight. A lot of interesting statistics. Biggest voter turnout in Nevada.
Oh, yeah.
I guess in history. But quite a few voters did not come out, and I guess we'll have to figure that out before next year. And I guess statistically, it was a big success as far as getting people registered and getting them out to vote.
No. I mean, and that's one of the wonderful things. I mean, people actually came out to vote, and that is definitely something that we should be. I mean, that's something that we're going to celebrate throughout this entire show. Is the fact that people understood what was at stake and showed up for early voting and showed up on election day to vote. So it was it's just been so busy. It's unreal. I mean, it's just nothing.
Let me ask you a question.
Yeah.
What do you think of the none of the above choice here in Nevada? Now it survived a Supreme Court challenge, and we're allowed to have it on the ballot. And from what I understand, in some cases, it was a pretty popular vote.
Well, I saw in online somewhere someone was talking about that, and they made the point of none of the above has no teeth, and it doesn't. It's just it's a statement. So
It sends a message, doesn't it?
Well, yeah, I mean, there's that aspect of it, and that's one of the things that we say all the time about voting is making, your vote is your voice, and none of the above is that's what that's designed to do. I thought this kind of had an interesting idea, kind of furthered that notion of none of the above should actually have some effect. If there's a huge number of none of the aboves for in a particular race, then maybe. Maybe something should happen there. I'm not sure exactly what should happen, but I thought it was something to think about, maybe not necessarily act on,
Well, we had this huge coalition meeting last night, as you know.
Oh, yeah.
Our good friend Al Martinez over at SCIU allowed us to use the hall over there. And We Are Nevada invited several legislators to come by and say hi. Great turnout, lots of senators, lots of assemblymen over there. Came by to say hi, and it was very successful. Yeah, pretty much everybody there won their race. And during the talk, our good friend Danny Thompson from AFL-CIO, Secretary Treasurer AFL-CIO, pointed out that our boots on the ground effort was probably the best in history.
Oh, yeah.
And he had pointed out what was interesting to me is he harped on the point that. People were kind of tired. They're tired of waiting around. They're tired of waiting for things to get corrected on their own and to go in the right direction. So in his view, he said that in the last, I think, day or two right before the election, we reached out to 50,000 people.
Oh, yeah.
And partly thanks to Citizens United. And as you know, Citizens United was a ruling that came down that said that corporations can be people. Mm-hmm. It also allowed people who donate to donate an unlimited amount, and they did not have to disclose who they were getting their money from. But in the process, what had happened was in the past, unions were only allowed to contact their own members. And because of Citizens United, they're now allowed to contact the entire public. And we were more than happy to go out and talk to the public. But what we found is that the public was ready to start taking on some of these challenges themselves. Did we not?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, and that's one of the things... like you said, that's one of the benefits, and is being able to get out there and actually talk to people, and we'll talk more about the election a little bit later on. We'll talk about the ground game and why that was so important, and I think that was something that was certainly recognized even by national media. Money versus participation. I mean, to put it plainly.
Well, they definitely were outraised. A lot of our Democratic friends, let's say it like it is, they were outraised money wise, but I think one of the mainstays of the Democratic Party since the beginning of time has been their ability to put on the ground game, to the ability and the willingness to go out and knock on doors and speak to people personally and let them know what's really going on.
Oh, yeah.
And I think the country sent a message. I don't think it was luck, or I don't think it was some kind of skill by the president to sway votes. I think the country spoke in one loud voice and said, we're not ready to give our country over to the rich and the large corporations.
Yep.
We want the country to be controlled by the people in the middle class.
Well, and it's funny that you say that, because one of the things that I was thinking about, especially immediately after everything was called, and you heard, is this a mandate? And there's been a lot of discussion about that. Is this a mandate? Is this not a mandate? And of course, the opponents, the people who didn't come out on the winning side, were said, "Nah, this is not a mandate." But I think it is a mandate, and I think for the reason that you just said, it's definitely a mandate. This is a situation where people are saying, "Yeah, we're not gonna take this anymore. We're not gonna put up with Wisconsin's, and we're not gonna put up with the rights of working families being trampled. And here's our opportunity to tell you that we're not going to take it anymore, and it's going to come in the form of a vote, and we're going to show up, and we're going to stand in line, and we're going to early vote, and we're going to take this on, and we're going to let you know." And so, yeah, I think there is a mandate here.
Well, the facts are clear to me. The president won Virginia, Massachusetts. He won Ohio, some of the key states.
Florida.
Yeah, eventually, right? Like by the time they
how disgraceful is
hand
that?
counted.
Seriously,
I don't know.
what is that? If you're a voter in Florida, right, and they're finally wrapping things up yesterday,
Well, they tell me their ballot initiative is printed. Like it wasn't electronic.
Yeah, but that's not the. I'm talking about the whole idea of that early voting was. I think it was 2 weeks, and then they made it 1 week, and it was just tighten the screws and do what you can to try and again, this idea of suppressing the vote, which we talked about all the way up to the election, right? So now they've done everything they could to squeeze and tweak and turn and suppress, and now the ultimate insult is you don't even know where your state stands until
right. So key states, New Jersey, states like that, and then you have the popular vote.
Oh yes,
the electoral vote was 332 to 206. To me, it's blaring. It's right out there. It's not something you can say, oh, that was close.
Can we as two guys from New Jersey put out an official thank you to Governor Chris Christie?
Chris Christie. I would have to say, I'm no politician, but I would have to say that the Republican Party is probably not too happy with him right now.
I called over to my favorite bakery in Lyndhurst, New Jersey, Mazur's, an old Polish bakery, and made sure that I sent a box of Linzer tarts over to the governor's office.
You mean Myers Bakery?
No, it's Mazur's. I can't do the correct pronunciation. I'm not Polish, but it's Mazur's.
So
that was an interesting turn of events.
So you want to skip over to some local news? See what's going on here in Nevada?
This is I have big news to announce for on behalf of education and on behalf of the Nevada State Education Association, which is that Tuesday we're going to be submitting the signatures, the will of the people, to registrars' offices throughout the state. So we are running our initiative petition, which is is designed to properly, adequately start the funding education, right? Dependable, dedicated funding to education. And this process was collecting the necessary signatures to be able to get it to the legislature. Now, there's a court ruling against that, and I'll get into that. But the court ruling did not stop us from continuing to collect signatures. It's not prohibiting us from handing the signatures, more than 120,000, over to the registrar's offices, and they will qualify them. We have heard from the state Supreme Court that they are going to expedite hearing our arguments that the will of the people should go forward to the legislature, and we're confident that as we get to the legislative session in Carson City, that this is going to go forward, and this is going to finally be a conversation about taking care of education in this state, which is necessary for the students and really necessary for our economy. It's
How
got to
many
happen.
signatures did they need to qualify?
74,000.
72,600,
Yeah.
and they
Yes.
got 20,000.
Yeah, right. So that and then they get qualified, and they go through all the petitions, and they figure out, and then they figure out who, if the signature, and it's just like the voting type of process.
I would say the legislators are going to have a real difficult time ignoring that
Yeah, well, that's
because it has to be presented
right.
to them in the legislature.
So look, the core challenge is not on the merits of the initiative. It's not on. There's not something in the initiative that constitutionally there's a problem with that. No, the core challenge is on this 200-word summary and this Twitter-like summary. You got to boil down the many pages of these petitions into a 200-word summary so that the person signing the petition kind of has an idea of what they're signing, right? So this summary was written, and in a previous court decision, it was described as being clear and concise, and then that was reversed in a secondary court decision. So we feel that we'll win this on appeal, and that it'll go forward. And like you said, it would be really difficult to ignore, to decline this based on a summary and deny the voice of 120,000 people.
Well, not to get too much into the minutia of the details of what they were talking about, but what they're proposing is that this explanation would define the funding source and how it would travel to get to education.
Right.
And a person, in order to explain that, the average citizen would have to understand the difference between a general fund and a special fund for education and how that money flows and how it affects the budget and how it's carved out. And they would have to really understand how the funding is moved around in Nevada,
Right.
and I don't see that as a possibility.
Well, and this is the thing, is that the NSCA is basically saying that, what you're talking about is a discussion about how the pie is cut up and how the pieces of the pie are distributed and that type of thing. And we're taking a step back and we're saying everyone knows, whether it's legislators or whether it's the public, that there isn't a pie, that there isn't enough money, that the money isn't there. And we need to figure out a way to make sure that there is dedicated funding that can withstand the ups and downs of the economy, because education deserves to be funded in a consistent way to serve our community and serve our students, right? So once the funding process is decided, how the money gets in there, then the pie cutting part and the distribution, then that'll get worked out. And this part is interesting because there's been a discussion about, there was the ballot initiative 2, right? Ballot initiative 2 didn't pass,
Right.
And that was a funding process
To repair schools.
to repair schools, right?
And that was Clark County only.
Yeah, and so here's the difference between the two. So that one was based on individuals, property taxes, right? This funding stream is asking corporations to pay their fair share. It's a broader-based tax initiative.
And they have to be, I guess, does their profit have to be over $1 million a year?
Oh yeah. It has to be
So
over
it's
$1 million
it's
a
big
year,
companies, big time
Exactly,
companies.
exactly. And it's saying to these big corporations that are profiting more than $1 million a year, and that look, it's time to pay your fair share. It's time to pay your fair share because everyone will benefit. You will certainly benefit not only from an educated workforce, but NSCA has finalized a study that shows that students that graduate from high school, they end up contributing more in the way of state and local taxes. They're less of a burden on social programs, everything from welfare to insurance and health insurance and things like that. So there's just the benefits just go on and on and on for this to happen.
What people are trying to get away, some people are trying to get away from, is the fact that the public has spoken. I mean, let's look at it.
Yeah.
They're saying, if nothing else, that you got to admit that the citizens are saying we have to do something about education in Nevada. We're 48th in the nation. We're one of the lowest per student, dollar amounts in the whole entire nation, and they want something done about education. And apparently 120,000 people think it's a good idea to get some help from the largest businesses.
Yeah, and so we're excited. It'll move forward. These signatures will be submitted on Tuesday, and then we wait to hear from the Supreme Court, and then we move forward from there.
Terrific. You are listening to the We Are Nevada Talk Radio Show with your co-hosts Nick the Archangel and Leonard Cardinelli, right here on KLAV 1230 AM and streaming live at www.klav1230am.com. Do you have a question about how collective bargaining works here in Nevada? Do you have a question about the public pension system here in Nevada? Are you wondering what's going to happen with Medicare, Medicaid, and Social Security? These are some of the questions that we dig into right here on the We Are Nevada Talk Radio Show every Friday morning at 9 a.m. right here on 1230 AM KLAV. The call-in number is 702-731-1230. 702-731-1230. Give us a call if you have a question or a comment.
Wow. You know, I have to say, I wasn't expecting that, and I certainly wasn't expecting you, Leonard, to turn the lights off and turn the disco ball on.
Yeah, well, for our friends from the 80s, they may remember that song. They may not. But you'd be surprised. You know, the other day, my sons are 11, 12, and 14, and we're in the car, and some 80s song came on, and all three of them knew the words, and they were familiar with it. And I think those songs are still pretty popular, at least in East Coast families.
Well, I think that we have a perfect balance here. You know, you have this interesting musical style, and mine is, also very different. So now we face. So how do you think we did this? So tell me, what do you think about the how the election rolled out and Labor's voice as far as the successes that we had both locally and nationally?
Well, let me start with Artie Blanco from AFL-CIO, because she probably registered, I want to say, and this is an estimate, I want to say 90 or 100,000 additional people who probably would not have gotten out to vote had somebody not knocked on their door and got them registered. We registered a ton of union members that were not registered who wanted to vote, and in some cases didn't know how to. They didn't know how to go about it. And I think that across the board, Nevada has spoken, especially in the Democratic arena. We kept the majority in the Senate. We kept the majority in the Assembly. I feel bad for our good friend Sheila Leslie up north. She was in a very, very close race and leading all night. And when I went to sleep, she still had the lead. And I woke up in the morning, and obviously she was not successful. So our heart goes out to her.
That was it was definitely heartbreaking. And when you talk about the idea of does your vote count, does it not count, that type of thing, right? And people get so caught up in the national elections where you have these huge numbers of voters, but the local elections are where it really matters and where it counts. This was a race that was decided by, I think it was 290 votes, something like that. It was tight. I know it was a little under 300, right? So but it makes a big and direct impact on you and me personally, as far as when we go into this next legislative session. This is something that we were talking about all the time, is that all the focus is on the national politics, but it's the local politics now, that as we mark our countdown to Carson City, and what's going to happen up there, and the things that are going to happen, right? So that one extra Democratic vote of support for working families in a state, would have made a big difference. Now, like you said, we have the majorities. It's not a super majority, but that was a race that just too close, too close.
Well, also in the Assembly, there was quite the shakeup. We were anticipating that our good friend Marcus Conklin would be successful in getting elected. He was in a very tough district. It was leaned toward Republican. We thought he'd be able to pull it out in that district, and he did not. And as a result, the Assembly got together, and they ended up choosing Marilyn Kirkpatrick, the Assemblywoman from North Las Vegas, to be the Speaker, and Assemblyman William Horn as a majority leader. Both good choices, but it did take some moving around now that Marcus Conklin, who was going to be the Speaker, had difficulty getting reelected.
Right, and I mean, look, don't get us wrong. Things worked out well. We certainly wish that these folks would have prevailed. We still have, and it's the election. And it was the run up to the election, and we would talk about Artie and the amazing work she did, and all the work that we've seen. And now we have to start looking at this legislative session, and we have to start focusing on it as a group and as Nevadans, and start looking at our goals and objectives as far as what we need to get done in this legislative session, right? And because of the vote and because of the voice and the fact that people stepped up and did what they needed to do, the job will be a little bit easier, but it'll certainly help in strengthening and advancing the things that our goals and the things that we want to do.
Well, in my district, April Mastruluca was successful in beating Bob Irvin, a very, very, very educated lady. So we're happy for her. And Joyce Woodhouse is also the senator in my district,
Oh, yeah.
and she also won. And we love Joyce, great lady, and she's really going to do an excellent job up there.
Yeah, I saw an interesting analysis of Joyce's win this morning, and it talked about it a little bit, and how it kind of went back and forth, and how there was the loss previously, and now and then Roberson's district, and now she's back in it. It's a great victory for her, and of course it's a great victory for us to have her back in and on our side.
Should I mention that we had a really good, very high Democratic voter turnout in Mike Roberson's district, or would that be that be not a good time to mention that?
I think it's the best time to mention it. I think it's important to, it's important that we, look, this is the good thing. That, again, we're going to talk about this, about people coming out and making sure that they're seen and they're heard. So, and in his district especially, because, and the election was not, and I'll keep saying it until we get to the legislative session, the election was not the last place for us to speak up and have our voices heard. We have this wonderful thing coming up in 2013.
Well, let's tell the listeners some of the things that we have in store.
Oh, yeah.
As we get closer to the session, we will be, as you know, a bill draft request will be submitted, and it can be an amendment to the law, changes to the law, and it goes to the committee that is best suited to look at the bill draft. And as they come in, Nick and I will be looking at them here on the show.
Oh, yeah.
And we'll be picking some of the best and some of the worst. And
right.
Giving our opinions, and hopefully have people calling in and give us their opinion.
Yeah, well, and that's that's the machine that drives the whole session, right? Is what is being proposed and what's up there, and how does it help us and how does it hurt us? And these things, if you try and monitor them online, you can do it, but there's so many thousands, right? I mean, it's a huge book, and but it's our responsibility, and not just Leonard and I, but everybody, especially members and everybody that has an interest in this stuff, to keep an eye on this stuff, because it has a direct impact on you. And a lot of times, things pop up, and during the last legislative session, there were BDRs that went forward, and we had some of our Clark County members ID these things and say, "Whoa, wait a second! This will have a really dramatic impact on on my job or my livelihood or this." Service to the community, especially, and we didn't understand it, and then they brought it forward and said, "This is the effect that this would have," and so then we as a coalition went up there with these members, with these public workers, and they sat down with the legislators and said, "Look, if you do this, this is the impact it's going to have on the community. So we need to take another look at it." And that's how effective it is. That's how it really works. This is the direct line that you'll have in the legislative session if you're informed and educated about what's going on up there.
Agreed. And I did want to welcome one of our newest partners to the coalition, Planned Parenthood.
Oh yeah,
has now joined, and they had a couple of representatives there last night. And one of the good pieces of news is that the coalition continues to grow. And conservatively, they're estimating the membership at about 250,000, but it's probably closer to 300,000 right about now.
So, it's important to celebrate these things, right? Because why, a public employee coalition, and the reason why it's great to have community partners is that it signifies that these community partners and Nevadans in general understand what's at stake, and they see that the impact of what we're trying to do here isn't just self-interested. It has a direct or indirect impact on everybody, right? So, and that's one of the reasons why we talk about education so much, because some people will say, well, I don't have kids in the school system, so how does it affect me? But of course, when you see it all the way down the line, it impacts everybody. If that student doesn't graduate and then they end up, their salary is $22,000, where if they graduate, it's $10,000 more, and if they go on to college, it's even higher. This, of course, has these benefits for everybody, because then you have someone who's qualified to do these jobs, and you can start bringing these, luring these companies into the state and diversify the economy. And because we have a workforce that can do this type of work, and there's just this effect that is great. So,
well, I'm glad you mentioned the youth, because we had a representative last night from the Latino Youth Coalition who also joined the coalition, and so now we're tied into a lot of the younger people that really are starting to make a push to be involved in politics and be involved in elections and have their voice heard. So we're proud to have them also as coalition partners, and you're starting to see a very diverse, very large group of Nevadans. And I think personally, what's pulling everyone together is the same thing that pulled them together during the election to elect the president. Is people are starting to realize that if we don't get together and do it ourselves, that it's probably not going to get done. And I think that's what's galvanizing everyone and bringing everyone together.
Yeah, and I think also, especially following the election, right, when you see how much money was pumped into the election from special interests, and you take a look at that, and it's like a wake-up call, right? This is how determined they are. They're going to pump billions into the campaign to try and buy it. Now, I love the headline that I read this morning. It says donors have little to show after the cash flow into the election, right? So it didn't really work, but I think it worked on our end of things, because people, we don't want someone to steal away our election process, and so I'm glad to see people that are motivated and these groups that are coming on board and saying, let's learn, let's figure out how to do this, and let's see what else we can do together as a group, as a coalition of people that want to make things better. And that's really what it's about. It's a coalition of people in Nevadans, and that's why it's called We Are Nevada. We are Nevadans, and we want to make things better, and we want to improve things.
Well, from what I understand, they pumped a lot of money into fighting Shelley Berkeley, for instance,
right.
Congresswoman from Nevada running for U.S. Senate. A wonderful lady, very knowledgeable, and I would have to say, from a personal point of view, because I do know her, that those commercials were somewhat inaccurate. And by the time you do the damage control, it's already over with. There's not much you can do about it.
Yeah, and this is the thing with that type of advertising, and it just floods the airwaves, and then it's media, it's earned media as well, and it's also all the telephone calls. It's the barrage of information, and that's again one of the reasons why this show exists is, and we'll be talking about PERS and collective bargaining later, and it's so that we can get this information out there and we can cut through all this junk. And because I think that it's indicative from the people that are joining the coalition and stuff, is that people want to get the information, and they want to understand it. They want to hear what we have to say.
So we got through the election. Is one of our next goals to try to have some positive effect on the law and the law changes or the protection of certain laws, and as we move closer to the session, try and keep Nevada going in the positive direction, because let's face it, education has a tremendous amount of support. Public employees have a tremendous amount of support, and now that they've woken everyone up and now everybody's looking at the problem, I think that once we go knocking on doors and we start contacting the public, for instance, Patricia Spearman, a newcomer to the Senate, great lady. I've talked to her many times. She's one of the best speech givers I think I've ever seen in history, and she's a very, very intelligent lady, and she won by quite a large margin. But what the interesting part of that story was, she was up against Senator John Lee in the primary, a good friend of ours, John Lee, good guy, and within a few weeks, in my opinion, because of the ground effort, within a few weeks, she had won the primary, and that was a really good example of when you can wake up the public and get them out there knocking on doors and talking to people. It can have an astounding effect.
Yeah, well, and you know what the thing is, I know we're talking a lot about our friends, but now we have to see, because as we mentioned, there isn't a supermajority locally, statewide, right? And then even nationally, if you look at the bigger picture of things, that there's still we still got to work together. Both sides still have to work together, and our organizations know that there are Republicans in the organizations, and of course they're involved and they're engaged, right? So when I look at the reports that are coming in now, the national reports about they talk about the fiscal cliff, and talk about compromise and working together to solve that problem. I think that's encouraging, and it's one of those things that you keep an eye on. Now, it's funny because all of a sudden this term popped up. I love when these terms pop up because being a communications person, you hear, fiscal cliff, and everybody latches onto that, and I must have heard it 100 times.
I don't know if I disagree with that though.
Well, look, actually, it's kind of funny because one of the report that I saw in the New York Times says that some economists are arguing that an impasse wouldn't be that drastic, and they're actually calling it a fiscal slope. So
it's not exactly a cliff; it's more like
but of course, no one's going to call it the fiscal 30-degree incline.
Well, let's face it, the impact of sunsetting the Bush era. Tax reforms is going to be, devastating on the economy. I don't disagree that we may not be able to recover from that.
Well, and I think, so I think this is interesting because I think we have a national discussion about taxes and sunsetting taxes and how do you pay for things. And I think we're going to be seeing the same type of conversation as we move into the legislative session, right?
And this military debate is going to heat up, I believe.
Oh yeah,
because the funding is set to be cut back, but the question is, and I have military friends that I've spoken to about this, and really what it breaks down to for them is we can either continue to fight over there and keep the fight over there, even though it's sucking up a lot of money, and if we leave, there's a possibility that they would strengthen the Middle East, and then eventually we'd have to deal with it here at home again. So,
right.
And I'm not sure, what my position is on that, but I can tell you many of them have that position.
Well, look, I know you agree with me. I know this is not what you meant, but my position, we support our troops in any way that we have to, with financially or whatever we got to do. That's just a priority. I just want on the fiscal cliff issue. I just want to because I want to make sure I define it, because look, this is one of those things where you hear it, and you assume you know what it means, and you touch on it a little bit, right? So basically, what they're talking about when they talk about the fiscal cliff is December 31st, 2012. Month or so, a couple of months. All of the Bush-era tax cuts are scheduled to expire, right? Along with President Obama's stimulus measures like the payroll tax holiday, that type of stuff. So, and this is all going to happen just as the federal government is going to be preparing to make deep cuts in federal spending, right? Which they're calling sequestration. What, come on. I call it deep cuts in spending. Anyway, so this is all negotiated back during the last fiscal standoff, right, in 2011, where the debt ceiling standoff that almost embarrassed the country and lowered the credit rating and so forth. So this is all kicked down the road. I think I remember during those arguments that's what was happening.
Just
the debt ceiling was kicking the can down the road post election because there wasn't the political backbone to try and solve the problem back then. So here we have it, right? And then everybody waited for the election for the cards to fall, and now it's being described as a fiscal cliff. This needs to be addressed now, and what's going to happen when these tax cuts expire. So that's what this means. And I thought it was interesting that some analysts are calling it not such a dire disaster. There is some discussion going on back and forth now about how to address this, and some compromises. And so this is one of the interesting things I saw in this article, this idea, this compromise where some are saying, well, maybe we'll make some compromises on Medicaid and Medicare if there's a willingness on the part of the right to raise taxes.
Well, Harry Reid said it, compromise is not a dirty word. He put it right out there, and I don't know, but didn't Boehner about a year or two ago say, compromise, I reject the word? Isn't that one of his, I believe that's one of his quotes, and I think that's why Harry Reid brought that up. But they weren't kicking the can down the road to ignore the problem.
Oh,
at least in
yeah.
my opinion, they were kicking the can down the road to see if the economy would recover and at
True.
what
I agree with that.
at what rate. So in other words, they're saying, you know what, we need to get this bill paid right now, and people do this in their personal lives. And you know, I need to see if I can shore up my finances in the next month or two, and then I'll get those bills paid. So I think it was an attempt to try and get through the next year, so that they could look at the economy and in hopes of it improving, which it is.
Right.
So I don't think we're in the same exact position we were last year.
So when we bring this home to Nevada and we bring it to the local level, the thing I want to say is that you know, it's our job, all of us, to keep an eye on this type of talk and to keep an eye on compromise and the solutions or the ideas that are being kicked around, right? Because we have a say. And we are Nevada. The Public Employee Coalition is that voice, and that is the voice that's going to carry the message up to the legislature and say, all right, well, look, we are here to work with you to come up with solutions, and not just to sit on the sidelines and read about it in the paper, but and this is what we think of this, and this is this is what we have to offer, and we are very much going to be part of the solution and coming up with ideas. Labor has done it before throughout history, and we're going to do it again because this is our home and this is what we want to, and we want to make improvements.
I think that as we move forward, the economy is getting better. What I think is going to happen is there's probably going to be a push to start hiring some people, because a lot of businesses were kind of on standby, you know, and they didn't want to hire in mass until they found out who was going to win the elections and how the economy was going to go. So I'm hopeful that by the end of the year that the unemployment rate will severely drop here in Nevada and possibly nationwide, and maybe some jobs will open up. And I have some friends in business that I've spoken to, and they said that they're feeling a little better. And I think the drop at the, you know, obviously the Dow dropped after the election, but that's fairly normal. And I think it took a drop because they were trying to send a message about who won the election. I'm not sure that it's a good indication of the futures, but I think it was more sending a message. And I think those points will recover in the next week or two, and hopefully we'll be on our way.
Yeah, you know, the Dow, the S&P, these things. Look, I worked for CNBC, and you know, we used to talk about this all the time. It was on a daily basis, and we talked about daily drops, weekly moves, up and down, back and forth. I remember when futures trading was instituted on a Dow, and way back then, and they said, "Look, this is going to be the Dow is going to become more volatile, and it's going to be more susceptible to different types of news and things like that." And so I'm looking at it now, and it's up 76, right? So
Oh, yeah.
Come on.
I think they were sending a message to show their disappointment.
Yeah, I mean, look, I'm not a day trader, and most people that put money into whether the 401ks or their mutual funds or whatever, they're not day traders either. They see especially a 300 point drop. You know, there was a time when a 300 point drop actually meant something. You know, when I mentioned I used to work for CNBC, when I went to work for them, and the Dow was down around 2,000 or 3,000 or something like that. You know, that's
because it was always small.
Then it
increments.
was huge. Yeah.
It was for
Right.
long periods of time. It was small increments.
Right.
It was a solid fund that did not go up and down, and it was understood that if you put your money in blue chips or Dow, that you would be pretty much solid for life. And then all of a sudden, they took that money and started to, for lack of a better term, gamble it in more volatile investments to try to make more money faster. Well, as you know, when you make more money faster, you lose more money faster as well, and that's that kind of ties into our PERS segment also, because that happens to be one of our concerns, that they're trying to get a hold of some of our PERS money so they can gamble it on Wall Street and see how they can come out of this. I was watching a special the other day on one of the news channels where they were talking about the economic collapse,
Right.
and how what it really came down to was these large corporations and Goldman Sachs and AIG and some of these large corporations. What they really did was they wanted to have a bunch of money to gamble on Wall Street to see if they could make more money, which they did. But in the meantime, the bottom fell out, and then once they gambled away all the money, the government stepped in and said, here's all your money back. $13.8 billion. I think AIG told them at some point on a Thursday or Friday, we need 1.8 billion by Monday, or we're going to be out of business. And then shortly following that, in a week or two, they gave bonuses, to all their executives in the millions.
That was a scary time. I'll never forget that, because that was, this was the. I remember the scenario being painted, and you saw banks, and there was a certain amount of, all right, well, we really don't know what's going on. And then when it was laid out about AIG, what AIG represented, and the kind of like that was the Alamo, the last straw. If they had failed, what was that? That was the cliff. There was your cliff, and it was a really scary time, and we've come so far from that. I don't know if we have all the protections in place to keep all of that from happening again. I personally don't think that we do, or that they're strong enough. But we certainly have come a long way from that really dark time.
Well, I hope that people at least learn from that in regard to PERS, because if you take that money from PERS and put part of it into a private fund, what they're really going to do is they're going to take your money and they're going to gamble with it. And we'll talk about that a little bit more in a PERS segment, because I kind of have an analogy that my good friend Yindra did last night at,
she did a great job
and stuff.
Yeah,
great presentation by Yindra Dixon over there at the meeting.
Well, I think that, and that was the thing, we're kind of echoing a lot of the points of what We Are Nevada stands for and what we're going to be doing moving forward. At the Minnesota State AFL-CIO Convention, Hubert Humphrey, the 38th Vice President of the United States, said, "The story of the labor movement needs to be taught in every school in this land. America is a living testimonial to what free men and women organized in free democratic trade unions can do to make a better life. We ought to be proud of it." This week in labor history, November 10th, 1933, sit-down strikes began at Austin, Minnesota Hormel plant with the help of the wobbly organizers, leading to the creation of the Independent Union of All Workers. Labor historians believe this may have been the first sit-down strike of the 1930s. Workers held the plant for 3 days, demanding a wage increase. Some 400 men crashed through the plant entrance and chased out non-union workers. One group rushed through the doors of a conference room where Jay Hormel and 5 company executives were meeting and declared, "We're taking possession, so move out." Within 4 days, the company agreed to binding arbitration. November 7th, 1959, the U.S. Supreme Court used the Taft-Hartley Act to break a steel strike. Taft-Hartley was passed in 1947 in the wake of the 1946 Oakland General Strike. It severely limited strike activities, specifically prohibited sympathy strikes and general strikes, and was essentially a giveaway to employers, helping pave the way for progressive weakening of the U.S. labor movement. The following is audio from a newsreel in 1959 about the steel strike.
The longest and costliest strike in the history of the steel industry hit the United States economy in 1959. Hard negotiations for a new union contract began in May, with both sides more adamant than ever not to give ground. David McDonald, president of the United Steelworkers, talked for the union. R. Conrad Cooper, executive vice president of U.S. Steel, for the 12 steel companies involved. Neither at any time during 6 months of on-again, off-again negotiations could budge enough to allow a general settlement. In July, the steel industry across the nation banked its furnaces, turned off the vital flow of steel. 500,000 steel workers saw their last paychecks for at least 5 months. Many of the nation's auto plants closed down within a few months, their supply of steel used up. They laid off 200,000 more workers. Other industries let go some 50,000 others. In early October, President Eisenhower stepped in, expressed weariness at the unbending attitude of both sides.
I'm not going to try to assess any blame, but I'm getting sick and tired of the apparent impasse in the settlement of this matter. And I think so are the American people.
A week later, he invoked the Taft-Hartley law to force the workers back on the job for an 80-day cooling-off period. The union challenged the injunction for the first time in the law's history, appealed it all the way to the Supreme Court. But the court ruled against the union, upheld the injunction. The steel mills resumed operation in mid-November. but took 6 weeks to attain maximum production. Negotiations at year's end remained in stalemate.
November 6, 1872. Suffragist leader Susan B. Anthony received a $100 fine for attempting to vote in a U.S. presidential election. Women did not win the right to vote until 1920. November 4th, 1924, Nellie Taylor Ross became the first woman ever elected governor of a U.S. state. Taylor Ross, the 14th governor of Wyoming from 1925 to 1927, also served as the director of the United States Mint from 1933 to 1953. To date, she remains the only woman to have served as governor of Wyoming. Wyoming also happened to be the first state to grant women the right to vote and the first to allow them to serve on juries. And this ends our week in labor history for Friday, November 9th.
Run for your lives! Collective bargaining is under attack!
Don't they know we're just families trying to get by? Why are they attacking collective bargaining? We've never hurt anyone.
Wow. Another good intro. I'm
It's so chaotic.
Jazzed by that. That was awesome.
It's just so chaotic. I get a little scared, you know.
I had several listeners tell me, both members and non-members, tell me that they really enjoy our intros, and I told them we have a couple of more coming in the next couple of months, and they can look forward to some more interesting intros.
It's always the problem when you encourage people. There's just bad things can happen. So we had some interesting collective bargaining news this week, and it's great actually to point this out because it'll kind of go into a discussion about collective bargaining and and how important it is, right? So we have a last minute deal that kept a cab driver strike from happening in the Valley, and so now this has been settled. So I don't know if you want to talk a little bit about what the issues were there.
Well, from what I understand, the issue is how drivers are allowed to bid for their shifts. The company wants to change the bidding process to allow better performing employees to get preferred shifts. Employees will be ranked by attendance, job performance, and productivity. Currently, the ranking is by seniority, which, as you know, seniority is at the core of union membership and union drive, and they want to base it on productivity. And as we all know,
well, that could be a problem.
I dare say favoritism may play into it.
Well, there's a lot of pitfalls to that, right? And we'll get to that. And it's interesting because I've had my friend Martin Bassick. He's a VP over at Clark County. He and I have talked a lot about seniority and about its importance and how it works, and one of the reasons why it's the cornerstone of the labor movement and collective bargaining. And you have a situation here where it's cab drivers, and why would someone who's been on the job I mean, it seems crazy to even suggest this and talk about this, but why would someone who's been on the job a lot longer and who has the experience and has been in town and be more valuable than someone who's just starting on day one? I mean, how many times have you traveled? I just had this happen to me where I traveled to a city, and I think it was El Paso or something like that, and I think it was El Paso, and I got into the cab. And the driver cheerfully announced to me that it was his first day.
Yeah.
Right? So what did I do?
Followed that car.
No, I cheerfully pulled my smartphone out and started bringing up the GPS, right? Because, look, the guy was nice enough. He was doing it. As for customer service-wise, look, he could be my Facebook buddy. But as far as getting me that direct line to where I needed to go and understanding the traffic patterns and everything else of the city that I was in, I'm sure I paid a couple extra bucks than I had to. Now, some analysis I've seen of this, talking about the cab drivers, that if you're based on performance, then they'll be more prone to doing things like long hauling or look, if it's performance based, then you're going to do what you have to do to be able to get those premium shifts, right? And some things that maybe aren't you're not supposed to do. So by basing it on seniority, now you have a situation where the people who are most experienced are providing the best service.
Let's call it what it is. This is a way to go after the senior drivers who obviously are at a higher pay, a higher rate, have accrued more benefits, and this is just a stab at them. That would be You know, that's going on all over Nevada, all over the United States, in the counties, in the cities, and they're just finding ways to try to circumvent the collective bargaining process because it's an ironclad contract that, let's face it, it's at this point it's pretty difficult to get around.
Yeah. So so that will I'm enjoying our collective bargaining segment, but of course coming
What's
up next is one of my favorite
Yeah.
segments.
Let's talk about PERS, man!
Pension talk.
I'm just telling you right now that whatever intro, promo, or whatever that we do, I am not screaming. It's on the record. I'm not yelling,
little
shouting,
Captain Caveman
or raising
there for
my
you,
voice. Yeah, little Captain Caveman. Boy, that's a throwback. So in last night's meeting, Marilyn Kirkpatrick, she brought up a fantastic statistic that I thought was worth repeating on the show today regarding the public employee retirement system. And how valuable it is to Nevada. And that statistic was that 78% of the recipients of the pension system, public employee retirement system, that are retired and are contributing to the Nevada economy. So, this is one of those situations where what is the strength of our retirement system for our public employees? The strength is that it directly flows back into our economy. That's one of the reasons, one of the many reasons why it's so important, and why it's so important to preserve it, is that we see businesses and the economy and our services and everything else. We feel a direct impact of that.
Yeah, it's they pointed out there were many good statistics when we had the PERS talk last night. One of the interesting facts that I thought they pointed out was the question was asked, does anyone know when the PERS makes a plan from the day you enter the system to the day you leave, what is that projection? In other words, a lot of people think that you do your time and then you get your retirement, and it's based on this relatively maybe 3-decade term, and it's actually based on 70 years for each and every person. So what happens is you end up stretching the money out over a very, very long period of time, which, as you know, makes it smaller increments of money. And also someone brought up that 80% of all the money paid by PERS is from their returns on their investment. Right? So only 20% comes from the actual money that is going into PERS, the actuarial value of the PERS, and really 80% of it is paid from the profits of the investments.
Right. So, and we talk about this a lot, and we talk about the fact that PERS is supported largely by the return on investment, and the return on investment has been 8% over 25 years. It's been an amazing performer in good times and bad, right? So what will keep it that way, right? Well, I'll tell you what won't keep it that way. If you disrupt the funding flow, if you disrupt the money that goes in to making these investments, if you tell the person who's working as a public employee that they have an option of how much money they want to contribute, they could scale back or bump it forward, or if you make it a pick-a-pay system like the mortgage disaster, then it'll disrupt the funding flow, and then not as much money will be going into these investments, and then not as much money will be being paid back out to retirees, and not as much will be you won't have that 80% figure that's keeping the system really, really healthy. So it's a what do they call it? It'll be a fiscal slope. A slippery fiscal slope that'll turn into a fiscal cliff, and of course that'll be relying on taxpayers then to bail the whole thing out. I'm telling you, if there is, mark my words, if there is something that disrupts the funding flow into the public employee retirement system,
no matter how good they make it sound,
you will end up seeing, no matter how good they make it sound, we'll be talking about taxpayer bailout of the system because they've undermined it.
I agree, and one additional fact that Assemblyman Marilyn Kirkpatrick pointed out last night is for a very long period of time, and I don't remember the period of time she mentioned, but Nevada PERS is one of the 5 top operating funds in the country over a significant period of time, and that's really the proof in the pudding. That really shows that it has sustained time and it's going in the right direction.
Yay, PERS. Thank you, everybody, for joining us again this Friday at We Are Nevada on 1230 KLAV AM every Friday morning. at 9 a.m. And this song here, Rise Up by Bruce Springsteen, I think is perfect to end the show.
It is totally
after the selection.
appropriate because that's pretty much what everybody did.
That's right.